and welcome everyone to the Snow Horse Marketing Podcast. Today we have our very first guest and brave guinea pig, Ken Robinson. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to speak with you.
Thank you. A little bit about Ken. He is a pro at this. He has been in marketing for over 2 decades. He is the CMO and one of the founders of KJP. And he is an expert in something I think everyone's really interested in right now. It's really kind of the attention in marketing is lead generation. And he's one of the founders of KJP. So he's also spent a lot of times building and developing a team to be an expert in several marketing fields. And so I'd just like to start with the first question of just tell us about what your experience has been like in building a team, being one of the founders of KJP. What have you learned about marketing and team building in that process?
You know, I think KJP Media is really focused on sort of the core of what my founders and I are passionate about. Demand generation, helping organizations build out a marketing tech stack, creative development, content development, thinking about marketing attribution, which is a topic that I think that is on a lot of marketers' minds these days, and then ROI modeling. Having come from a finance background and had sat across the table from many CEOs and board members, the question always comes up, where are the marketing dollars going and what are you getting from a return on that? Certainly the drill down on that ends up being by business unit and by channel and by geo. And so my founders, we thought, let's focus on those areas that are most important to us. It's so we are a consulting organization and focus mostly on B2B, but some B2C organizations. So that's kind of the core of our business. When we thought about, the team that we wanted to put together, we wanted to get in kind of each of the respective areas, kind of that Renaissance person. We weren't looking for people that looked the same. And what I mean by that is we wanted to make sure we had a cohesive culture, but we wanted an interesting tapestry of the people that were on the team, but had the same sort of mindset. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Oh, that sounds like it. No, I actually find it very interesting. I also have a financial background, not quite as prestigious as yours, just licensed financial planner, and I've worked a lot in the data world. And I totally agree with you. I feel like it's very data driven. One thing I have found in working with many clients across hundreds of verticals is the difference between a business really being able to leverage their marketing and those who just can't quite seem to get it together is the understanding of the data. I remember we had a client once who phenomenal results. We got them something like a 12x and it was like a 20x ROAS. Like it was insane numbers. And this client, they decided they weren't sure what we were doing was working, right? And I remember I got on I know, I was like, oh my goodness, okay, you are our case studies, what you are, right?
Yeah.
What we are doing is working. And I remember just getting on a call with them, and they were in e-commerce and they had a Shopify account, which I love Shopify because they give excellent data. And so we went through the data, and I realized like we actually changed our process a little bit to have more education with the clients in the first 3 months to help them be able to read the data. Because I feel like that is the major difference. I mean, not all marketing gets a ROAS, there's brand awareness, but it can be part of the flywheel approach, I'm sure that you're aware of, And so all of it leads to sales, even if it's not directly. And being able to read the data is what allows you to decipher what's the best strategy to go with.
That's exactly right. To add on to that, I think the other important component to the data is making sure that you have alignment with sales, because in companies that I've started with and companies that I've been inserted into as of late, if the sales team, you get into QBR or it's a board meeting or something like that, and sales goes, "That's not right. I don't believe that. We're not aligned." The discussion, it stops. So data integrity, from a marketing standpoint, it's not the only thing, but it is absolutely foundational, I think, in terms of marketing success and drawing marketing and sales alignment in an organization. So it does come down to that integrity, and also making sure you've got clear lines of communication with sales leadership. And you're also having regular check-ins, not at a QBR, not on a monthly basis, but the demand gen teams that I've led, we checked in weekly, and we went through the data. We went through what campaigns are coming up, how are the campaigns that have already been executed, how are those doing. So I think having good data integrity, one, to draw that alignment with sales, but then also, depending on the type of business that you're in, you have to be able to segment that data, whether it's one to many, if you're going after an SMB segment, or, if you're doing something that's, around maybe one to few, or an ABM strategy. The data really is just critical to your success.
Oh, I completely agree. I've been in marketing for over a decade and had some incredible experiences, but it's only been in the last 2 years that I've been working directly with lead gen and with sales teams. And I will tell you, it has been such a game changer for me. The way you read the data is very different. I know so many clients come to us because they've done lead gen before and they had numbers, right? They had so many leads, they had 50 leads a week coming in or whatever, but they weren't quality leads, or they weren't their ICP, their ideal customer profile, or they were just junk leads. There's a lot of lead gen companies that are unethical in that way, unfortunately. And so, I completely agree. There needs to be that just that pull through and that alignment between sales and marketing. I was part of a pretty large organization several years ago. I was on the sales team and learning a lot about sales and marketing. It was a very different role for me, and I learned a lot with it, which was fantastic. But I realized what the disconnect was. Even though we had all hand meetings, we had meetings on meetings on meetings. We did, but but there was such a disconnect in between what was being sold and what was being promoted out. And I found it, and there was very few inbound leads coming in. And I actually live here in Utah, and I don't know if you know this about Utah, but Utah is kind of like the sales capital of the world. A lot of big tech companies, they put their sales offices in Utah. And it's so fascinating to me to see the different ways they get set up. And it's very common out here for a sales team to be, the salesperson has to identify, prospect, do all the research, and do the closing and do the launching, and then they hand it over to another team to manage. And what I have learned, running, with Snow Horse Marketing, helping run our sales department here, is that's way too much for one person. And you miss the critical piece, which is the marketing message and the thing that's drawing someone in. It becomes more of a hard sell than a warm sell that's actually adding value. And what has your experience? Have you had a similar experience or observation?
I was a CMO at NetDocuments in Lehigh. So I have I have experience working in Utah. I do find the people to be very warm and genuine and good salespeople. Part of what I did, and I'll talk just briefly about my experience at NetDocuments. I ended up turning over probably half the staff, just because I needed the right people in the right roles. For my previous company, I brought over 6 people to fill out demand gen and ops and creative and corporate communications. So I was able to build a very good team. But yeah, I would agree. One of the exercises that we went through was kind of rebranding NetDocuments and the value proposition. But in part, I built out the product marketing function. And so we started with identifying the buyer personas. And we sold into what would be considered SMB or solo or small practitioners from a law firm standpoint, corporate. We sold into AmLaw, which is the 300 largest law firms in the world. And then we sold into the Fed space. And so it was really a wonderful exercise to go through and think about what are the buyer personas across CIOs, CTOs, security, general counsel, and then how across each one of those business units does that map to our product profile. So, for us, it really started with the value proposition in each one of those spaces. And, where do we find them and how do we attract them? How do we drive brand development and equity? So in many cases for us, it started with the product marketing side. Because in my mind, product marketing is sort of the air traffic controller. They sit between product, they sit between sales, and they sit for the broader marketing organization. And so I think that was absolutely instrumental in terms of providing that connective tissue with both marketing across functions and with sales.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful experience. And I'll just reiterate what you said. I know when we have clients coming in, a lot of times the first thing we do in the first 90 days is we evaluate their ICP, their ideal customer profile, those personas that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I am always just shocked at how few companies actually know who their ICP is because of they're just not reading the data or reading like the revenue statements, Yeah. A lot of times it's those higher end clients. I know there was a nonprofit we actually worked with who did a fantastic job at, they did selling auctioned items on their website, and their pricing was pretty low. Like their pricing was between 20 and 30 bucks for everything. But a mistake was made once, and someone accidentally put in, they had a bigger item that was going to be 90 bucks. And someone accidentally did a typo and sold it and posted it for 900, and it sold.
It sold?
It sold. Like within 2 hours, it sold. And we went and had a chat with them.
You're like,
oh.
Maybe we should add an extra zero to
everything.
Everything.
Exactly. And they did. They actually increased, of course they kept the smaller amounts, for people who can only afford smaller donations, kind of a deal. But about half the inventory, we just add a zero to. And we were, and it was great.
That's genius.
It was brilliant. And that's where, like reading the data, you just got to check in and see like what is working and let's double down on that,
Yeah.
Well, I do know we are running out of time. So I did want to, there's one last question I did want to hit with you. I know that you've had a lot of experience with several tools over the years, but if anyone is listening in and being like, someone with your experience or 25 years of experience, is there any tool you would specifically recommend for someone to learn about or use and implement in their business?
I think the two tools, if you will, are in the cornerstones of my marketing organizations. One is Salesforce. I've used NetSuite and the like, and I think that's a tool for maybe a little bit more finance and billing and things like that. I'm personally passionate about Marketo. As we talked about before the call, I've done 8 implementations of Marketo. Been executive sponsor for those. I've had to bring together 3 instances of Marketo, swap out Acton, a swap out of Eloquent. Not that they're bad tools, but it's just I guess, a professional comfort. Yeah, and then think about the tools that connect into that, whether it's a Ringlead or Reachforce. Just make sure that as the data comes through the front door, it's as clean as you can get. And then think about on the back end, how do you maintain the integrity of that data? Kind of goes back to the earlier parts of our conversation. In many cases, marketing's success can be driven by good data, and it also enables that synchronization between marketing and sales. If you've got good data and it's trustworthy data, then a lot of conversations flow naturally. I mean, you've seen the tapestry of all these tools out there, and it's just grown exponentially. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. But for me personally, when I go into an organization, I like to see Salesforce in place, and if I have an opportunity, put Marketo in place, and then the rest just kind of builds off of that.
Yeah, no, it's something I've experienced myself. We use a similar program. AdRoll is what we use, and it is like, it's phenomenal. Like when you're able to pull that data, we send out monthly reports, and it's just straight data. We're like, here's the data. This is how we're making the decisions. And when you have people going in and optimizing things, you want to have that data. And so, no, that's awesome. And Marketo is fantastic. Most of my colleagues use Marketo. And I know they just landed a fantastic contract with Amazon just a few years ago. So they're being strategic.
As a complement to that, I think you can have the right technology in place or technology in place, but I think you have to have somebody that both understands the technology and how to get the most out of it. Whether you think about lead nurturing, you think about scoring, attribution modeling, you have to have somebody that is passionate about understanding that and solving problems, and being able to communicate that to whether it's demand gen or leadership team. So it's not technology for technology's sake, but I think you have to have the right person that has their head underneath the hood of the technology to make sure it's configured correctly. They can tweak it, they can pull the data out, they can interpret that, and then they can present that. So I think it's got to be a 1-2 combination. It's not just putting technology in place for the sake of technology.
Oh, I completely agree. It's actually something we've improved our screening process and hiring for, that curiosity, that willing to just get in elbows deep into the process.
Yeah, exactly. You want a problem solver.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for joining me today, and I appreciate your input. And thank you for joining our podcast.
Absolutely, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for letting me be the first one through the front door. So,
well, thanks for being our guinea pig.
I wish you nothing but the best success, and certainly, if there's anything I can do to contribute to your momentum, please let me know.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.